Tucker Carlson is probably the most important commentator in America right now. The former Fox News host is building his own network and channel and has millions and millions of followers, reaching tens of millions of people, probably tens of millions of Americans every single week with his videos. And he has become the central voice of the populist right, and increasingly also a voice for some on the populist left, which is incredibly interesting. There are some speculations what he's up to. Is he going to stay a commentator, or is Tucker actually venturing out into politics? And he just recently, last week, a few days ago, released a 10-point plan for America, which is more evidence that something is happening there, and it's worth watching because Tucker is probably the singular most important force in American politics in terms of political activation. So today we are going to look into these 10 points, what they might mean, both looking at the points, what they mean for America if implemented, but also looking at what it might mean for Tucker Carlson's future. So the points are here. We are going through them one by one, and we start with the first point, fair. Basically, Tucker is pointing out that the same law must apply to presidents, federal agents, billionaires, and ordinary citizens. The whole Epstein class problem. So he addresses basically the big topic of Epstein and the idea that there are multiple layers of legal application or application of the law in America, not just in America, but he's focusing on America. I agree, of course, with him, and everyone agrees with that everyone feels these laws are not being applied evenly. And that is a big problem. It happened when Trump was accused in New York, which was a very selective type of legal application. And we saw it, of course, with Epstein files being hidden and a lot of people seemingly being above the law. And the problem with that is once you allow people to be above the law, it creates a problem for democracy. It creates a problem for legitimacy. So it's a good point to make fair the number one point. We will get to some criticism of his points in a second, because obviously the question is, okay, great, but how? But everyone agrees that is a big problem here. The next big topic, he says, point number 2 of 10, sovereignty. Freedom from foreign influence. And of course, we know he's a huge Israel critic, and he has the view that the Iran war and many other things in America are driven by the Israel lobby. That is Tucker Carlson's take. That is also the take for many on the left, the populist left. And maybe it's not just about Israel, it's about many other things that are happening. It could also be sovereignty from, sovereignty or independence from other influences, like big corporations, like lobbyists that are hijacking democracy. So corporate capture, but also finally debt dependency. The fact that the United States and many European countries, or all of them, are being pushed into a debt dependency by increasing the national debt more and more, which means you're losing sovereignty because the entire taxes go into increasingly into paying off debt and interest, which means you're surrendering control to the people who hold that debt and interest. Sovereignty must exist at both levels. The country controls its policy, and the citizens control, or the citizen controls his life and finances. So very good point here. It's not just the sovereignty of the state, it's also the sovereignty of the citizen, maybe even more important than the state. Number 3, productive. Tucker says we need to be productive. We need to do farming, manufacturing, craftsmanship over speculation, surveillance, and war. You know the whole criticism. If you don't produce anything, you have a problem. The city of London, great example. Huge chunk of the UK economy. But what does it do? Shifting some money back and forth, that's a problem in Tucker's opinion. Productive work should improve people's lives, give workers pride, and create things worth having. This is, of course, a very complicated topic in the age of AI. It's a very complicated topic economically, but that is his point. We need to be productive and do actually things that matter for humans and produce them domestically. One of the most interesting points is point number 4, beautiful. The restoration of cities and public spaces from ugliness and disorder. Tucker's opinion, we live in ugly countries more and more, especially in the United States. Brutalist architecture replaces beautiful old buildings. Graffiti all over the place, homeless people. We know the whole problem. If you've ever been to LA or San Francisco or even New York, there is a problem there, or Portland. So he advocates for beautiful spaces. Beauty should be a public objective, not a luxury considered only after cost and efficiency. I absolutely agree. Again, the question is how, but healthy, obviously. Better food, sobriety, and physical health. So he advocates for what RFK Jr., the Secretary of Health and Human Services, is advocating for. We need healthy food, obviously. Success should be measured by the health and capability of the population, not by healthcare spending or drug consumption. Again, that goes towards sovereignty again. Who actually controls the healthcare policy? Not the people, and not the people who want to keep everyone healthy, but the people who make the most money when people are sick. Honest, sure. Consequences for official deception and access to major state archives. Here we talk about Epstein, we talk about 9/11, we talk about JFK, and that is also an accusation a lot of people level against Tucker. You are a conspiracy theorist. You say JFK has been assassinated by some other people than we were told. 9/11, building number, what is it, 7? Building number 7, imploded, was actually destroyed by someone. You can watch the videos. You probably know all about it. I say to that, leave Tucker alone. It's not about the conspiracy theories. It's about being honest. He just says, if you have nothing to hide, why are you not publishing the files? And I have to completely agree. Something is being hidden here, and we don't need to go into conspiracies. We can just insist on releasing these files. The government is there to serve the people, and the people want to know the truth. Hey, on this channel, we do something very important. We deeply analyze, understand, and predict capital, AGI, and politics. Not just to beat the markets and make a lot of money, even though that's important, but also to build a new society and make the future good for all of us, the pioneers. If you want to help me on this journey, you can do that by doing a very simple thing: like and subscribe. It helps me a lot. Thank you so much for your support, and let's get back to the video. Number 7, we have 3 more to go, but number 7, optimistic children and future generations at the center of long-term decisions. I 1,000,000% agree here. This is about families and, more importantly, children. And optimism has to do with children. A serious political system should make family formation possible and give young people reasons to believe in the future. Absolutely. Carlson also argues that having children is a biological imperative and the foundation of long-term thinking. And he blames aging and childless elites for policies that disregard future generations. And whatever you think of it, I think nothing is more powerful than having children in terms of thinking not just about yourself and thinking into the future. I know many people. Children are a forcing function, because even the most degenerate person, once they have children, kind of cares about these children. So it is the lowest hanging fruit and the strongest forcing function to make people less egoistic. I agree, but again, we will get into the criticism. You see where this is going. The question is how. Wise. Well, who can be against wisdom? And so he advocates for education. Think Pioneer Academy, grounded in physical reality, human nature, sexual difference, and practical skill. Well, that's a random list of things. I think wisdom is smart, but we have to understand what wisdom actually means. Schools should teach what Carlson calls unchanging facts about human nature. Again, the question is how? Tucker. You're basically saying, don't be insane, be smart. Well, if you tell an insane person to be smart, maybe that doesn't work. If you tell woke people don't teach all that stuff, they say, screw you. So it is interesting to discuss what these points actually are, right? But we get into that in a second. Education succeeds when people can understand reality, make sound decisions, and act competently. which is very interesting because it comes very close to our definition of wisdom in pioneer lands, the ability to set the right goals and take the right actions. And of course, one centerpiece of reality engineering and what we do at the Pioneer Academy is to understand reality. That is a very important thing. And the art and science, how we understand reality in our daily lives, in our trades, investment decisions, policy decisions, personal decisions, is one of the big questions. So, number 9, decent. Again, I will get to my criticism in a second, but obviously decent people are very good people. Yes, we should be decent. Moral limits on state violence and restitution for unjust harm. This is probably going towards COVID. It's going to go towards war crimes that are being committed on our side and what we do, restitution. Human beings must come before governments, machines, institutions, and abstract political objectives. The US should apologize and pay restitution for killing non-combatants. He talked about the girls' school in Iran, and I totally agree with it. If the US would actually pay restitution to the Iranians for this accident, war crime, whatever it was, it would go a very long way. And decency means you're not pointing to the Iranians committing crimes. That's their problem. That's not our problem. Our problem is when we commit crimes. We as the collective West. And yes, we should behave differently and say, you know what, that was kind of a crime, a horrible crime, and we will pay restitution for it. It sends a signal, a symbolic signal that's very powerful. He made this point. I think he might be right. Of course, I also agree the Department of War is a horrible rebrand. You don't want to look like the bully and the violence perpetrator in the world. You want to call it Department of Defense. And stop funding allies that commit what Carlson called genocide, citing Israel. We know this is very controversial with everyone who's pro-Israel, but that is what Carlson is advocating. A decent society judges policy by what it does to real people, not by the institutional language used to justify it, obviously. And finally, united. I mean, you have to end with that for the United States. Shared nation, language, and boundary, including an immigration pause while AI labor effects become clearer. I mean, every normal person is for that too. You need borders. If you want solidarity and unity, you can't let everyone into the country who doesn't belong there. Not hard to understand. So what we are going to discuss in the weekly brief is how does this compare when we say Carlson versus Pioneer Lands? It's not a combative thing. I think Tucker Carlson is right with many of these things. We compared to the 7 principles of Pioneer Lands, and we think a little bit about what does it all mean and what does it mean for US policy and US politics. We also look at where Pioneer Lands is different and how we assess these 10 points and level some criticism. The quick takeaway here is basically what we see with Tucker's points is that very likely, I can give you a little bit of a preview here. Why is he publishing it right now? I think it signals clearly that something is up. Okay, let's jump into the political dimension of that. To see the full weekly brief, go to pioneerlands.org. Every single week, we bring you the latest in politics and the cutting-edge developments in the United States and Europe, so we can follow the crazy transformations that are happening in this age of AGI. The matrix is imploding and everything is changing. So check it out on pioneerlands.org. You also find 2 other weekly briefs. One, stocks and capital markets, where we cover stocks like Tesla, SpaceX, and of course the markets as a whole. And we also have an AI Frontier weekly brief, where you learn about the latest models, the latest ChatGPT developments, Anthropic and Claude, Grok, and the Chinese models, so you are up to date also on technology. See you in Pioneer Lands.